a land where deserts, rugged mountains, and harsh plateaus have nurtured civilizations that endured for thousands of years. Here once emerged one of the largest empires of the ancient world, controlling nearly half of humanity in the 6th century BCE. The massive armies of Alexander the Great once burned the palaces of Persia. New dynasties later rose again from the ashes. Across millennia, from ancient cities buried beneath the sands, to empires that once ruled half the known world, to the upheavals that still shape modern geopolitics today, Iran awaits, and its secrets are about to be revealed. Long before great empires rose, long before names like Cyrus or Alexander entered the pages of history, the land of Iran had already become an ancient stage where humanity began writing the earliest chapters of its story. A vast plateau stretching across more than 1.6 million square kilometers, positioned between several of the ancient world's great centers of civilization. Across the horizon rose the towering Zagros Mountains, while immense salt deserts such as Dasht-e-Kavir reflected the sunlight like enormous mirrors across the barren landscape. Archaeological evidence shows that humans inhabited the Iranian plateau remarkably early. In caves scattered throughout the Zagros Mountains, archaeologists have discovered the bones and stone tools of Neanderthals dating back roughly 50,000 years. Caves, such as Shanidar and Warwasi, reveal a distant world in which humans survived by hunting and gathering, following migrating herds across wide grasslands. At Ganj Dareh, scientists discovered evidence of goat domestication dating to around 8000 BCE, one of the earliest signs of animal husbandry anywhere in the world. Archaeologists have also uncovered thousands of finely carved chlorite stone artifacts dating to roughly 3000 BCE. During this same period, monumental religious structures began to appear. One of the most striking examples is the ziggurat of Choga Zanbil, constructed around 1250 BCE. From the earliest farming villages, from simple pottery fragments and ancient trade routes, the foundations of complex societies slowly began to emerge. One civilization would go on to build cities, develop systems of writing, and establish some of the earliest diplomatic agreements in history. That civilization was Elam, and its story began in the ancient city of Susa. In the dry lands of the Iranian Plateau, more than 4,000 years ago, a city began to rise from layers of ancient alluvial soil. Under the blazing Middle Eastern sun stood dark red mud brick walls, dusty roads leading toward massive stepped temples, and caravans of merchants carrying metals, gemstones, and textiles from distant lands. At the center of this ancient world stood Susa, a city that had existed since around 4200 BCE and would later become the heart of the Elamite civilization. Around 2700 BCE, the civilization of Elam formally entered recorded history. Archaeological research reveals that Susa functioned as a powerful center of authority. With thick defensive walls, large temple complexes, and densely populated residential districts, indicating that it once served as the political and religious center of an organized state. One of the most important markers of a civilization is the development of writing. And around the 3rd millennium BCE, the Elamites used a script known as Linear Elamite, which later evolved into a cuneiform writing system influenced by Mesopotamia. Trade routes from the Iranian Plateau passed directly through Elamite territory, transporting tin, copper, and lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, as well as goods from the Indus Valley. One of the most striking examples of Elamite achievement is the ziggurat of Choga Zanbil, constructed around 1250 BCE during the reign of King Untashnapirisha. Its walls were decorated with religious inscriptions offering prayers to the protective gods of Elam, making it a symbol of a society with organization, religion, and political authority. And then, over the centuries, powerful new forces began to move across the Iranian Plateau. They brought with them languages, cultures, and beliefs unlike those that had existed before. And these tribes called themselves by a name that carried a special meaning: Arya, the noble people. Their arrival would transform the history of Iran, marking the beginning of what would eventually become the ancient Iranian identity. Groups of nomadic people moving slowly through wind-swept valleys, with herds of horses and livestock behind them, and the snow-covered peaks of the Zagros Mountains rising along the horizon ahead. From the arrival of these tribes, two major peoples would emerge, the Medes and the Persians. And at the same time, a new religion appeared that spoke of a cosmic struggle between light and darkness. Between roughly 2000 and 1500 BCE, groups belonging to the Indo-Iranian branch began migrating onto the Iranian plateau from the steppes north of the Caspian Sea. Modern linguistic research shows that their language belonged to the vast Indo-European language family. These migrants referred to themselves as Arya, a word in their ancient language meaning noble people or free people. Agricultural communities had already existed for thousands of years, and civilizations such as Elam had already built cities, temples, and trade networks. At first, the Aryan tribes lived a semi-nomadic lifestyle, raising livestock and moving seasonally in search of pasture. and the most important animal in their lives was the horse. From this point, two major groups began to form. The first were the Medes, who settled mainly in northwestern Iran near the Zagros Mountains. The second were the Persians, who lived farther south in the region known today as Fars. According to Zoroastrianism, the universe is defined by a great struggle between two opposing forces. On one side stands Ahura Mazda, the god of wisdom, order, and light. On the other stands Angra Mainyu, representing darkness, chaos, and destruction. Within this worldview, another revolutionary idea also appeared. The concept of linear time, looking back through the lens of history. It becomes clear that the arrival of the Aryan peoples created a profound turning point on the Iranian Plateau. Then, in the 6th century BCE, from the very lands of the Persians, a remarkable leader emerged. Within only a few decades, he would unite the Iranian tribes and build an empire stretching from Egypt to the Indus Valley. Around the middle of the 6th century BCE, something unprecedented in human history began to take shape on the dry lands of the Iranian Plateau. Columns of cavalry moved across vast valleys. Ancient cities opened their gates in surrender without being destroyed, and a network of power was expanding at an astonishing speed. It represented an entirely new model for governing a diverse world. And at the center of that transformation stood one man, Cyrus the Great. Later remembered by history as Cyrus the Great. Around 550 BCE, Cyrus led a rebellion against the ruling power of the Medes. This moment marked the birth of the Achaemenid Empire, the first Persian empire. After defeating the Medes, Cyrus turned westward, and his next target was the wealthy kingdom of Lydia, located in Asia Minor, famous for its abundant gold and for developing one of the earliest coinage systems in history. In 546 BCE, the Persian army defeated King Croesus. The city of Sardis fell, and soon the entire region of Asia Minor came under Persian control. In 539 BCE, the Persian army entered this legendary city. Remarkably, Babylon was captured with almost no destruction. After taking control of Babylon, Cyrus made a decision that would become historically symbolic, an event recorded on a famous artifact known as the Cyrus Cylinder. Under his successor, Darius I, the Persian Empire would enter its most powerful era, while also setting the stage for one of the most famous confrontations in history. The conflict between Persia and the Greek world. From the wheat fields of Egypt to the steppes of Central Asia, from the shores of the Mediterranean to the Indus Valley, tens of millions of people lived under the rule of a single dynasty. Roads stretching for thousands of kilometers connected imperial capitals, while royal messengers on horseback carried news across the vast empire. After the death of Cyrus the Great, the Persian Empire continued to grow under his successors, but the ruler who brought the empire to its highest level of organization and power was Darius I, who came to the throne in 522 BCE. Darius ordered the construction of one of the most remarkable road systems of the ancient world, the Royal Road. With this efficient system of roads, taxation, and administration, the Persian Empire became the most stable superpower of the ancient world at that time. In 499 BCE, a rebellion erupted in the Greek city of Miletus, known as the Ionian Revolt. In 490 BCE, the Persian army entered Greece and landed near the plain of Marathon. There, the Battle of Marathon took place, where about 10,000 Athenian soldiers confronted a much larger Persian force. In 480 BCE, the Persian army marched into Greece through a narrow mountain pass called Thermopylae. And then, about a century after those wars, a young conqueror would emerge from the Greek world itself. Within only a few years, he would accomplish something no one had imagined possible. Marching directly into the heart of the Persian Empire and bringing its power to an end. His name was Alexander the Great. The massive stone columns of Persepolis glowed beneath the desert sun, while Macedonian armies marched through gates carved with lions and sacred bulls. In 334 BCE, a young king from Macedonia began a campaign to conquer Asia. His name was Alexander the Great. His army numbered only about 40,000 soldiers, including the disciplined Macedonian phalanx infantry, the famous companion cavalry, and allied Greek forces. Standing before them was a superpower, the Achaemenid Empire. Stretching from Egypt to Central Asia, from Asia Minor to the Indus Valley, ruling over tens of millions of people. A series of decisive battles unfolded within just a few years. And in 333 BCE, the Macedonian army defeated Persia at the Battle of Issus. But the most decisive confrontation came in 331 BCE on the plains of Gaugamela, near what is now modern-day Iraq. After Gaugamela, the gates of Persia stood open and Alexander entered Babylon, Susa, and finally Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Persian Empire. What happened next remains debated among historians. And in 330 BCE, the palaces of Persepolis were destroyed in a massive fire. Some ancient sources claim that Alexander ordered the city burned in revenge for the Persian destruction of Athens during the Greco-Persian Wars, and the flames became a powerful symbol marking the end of an era. In 324 BCE, at Susa, Alexander held a famous mass wedding ceremony where thousands of Macedonian soldiers married Persian women. Seen from the perspective of thousands of years of history, the fall of the Achaemenid Empire resembles a meteor impact in the universe of human civilization. Local dynasties began to rise again. Persia did not disappear. It was preparing for another rebirth with formidable cavalry warriors, new empires, and future confrontations with Rome. Desert winds sweep across the vast plains of ancient Iran. Columns of mounted archers surge forward like sandstorms, turning their backs as they retreat while still releasing arrows with deadly precision toward those who pursue them. Far to the west, heavily armored Roman legions march across the lands of Mesopotamia. After Alexander the Great died in 323 BCE, his enormous empire quickly fractured among his generals, and Iran fell under the rule of the Seleucid dynasty, a Hellenistic state that controlled much of the Middle East. Within this environment of shifting power, a new force emerged from northeastern Iran. Around 247 BCE, a nomadic leader named Arsacus led the Parni tribe in a rebellion against the Seleucids. That uprising laid the foundation for a new empire, the Parthian Empire. One of the most famous demonstrations of Parthian power occurred in 53 BCE at the Battle of Carrhae. Legions trained for close combat found themselves forced to stand still beneath a storm of projectiles. The result was devastating. About 20,000 Roman soldiers were killed and 10,000 were captured. In 224 CE, a regional leader named Ardashir I defeated the last Parthian king and founded the Sassanian Empire. The Sassanian rulers adopted the title Shahanshah, meaning King of Kings. The Sassanian period, lasting from 224 to 651 CE, is widely considered one of the most brilliant eras in Persian history. Architecture flourished with monumental constructions, such as the vast vaulted palace at Tak Khasra, which featured the largest brick arch of the ancient world. Their intricate metalwork, textiles, and stone reliefs have been discovered throughout many regions along the Silk Road. One of the most dramatic periods unfolded in the early 7th century. Sassanian armies captured Damascus, Jerusalem, and even advanced close to Constantinople. When Arab Muslim armies entered Iran in the 7th century, it marked one of the most significant turning points in the long history of this land. The vast deserts of the Middle East began to tremble under the movement of a new force. Columns of soldiers riding camels and horses crossed the burning sands, carrying a religious faith that had only recently emerged, but was spreading with astonishing speed. To the east, the ancient cities of Persia, once the centers of powerful empires for centuries, stood at the edge of a historic transformation. Fortresses, trade routes, and palaces that had once flourished under the Sassanid dynasty were now witnessing a profound shift. Yet its long wars with the Byzantine Empire had exhausted the resources of both powers. Between 602 and 628, the Byzantine-Sassanid War, which lasted nearly 3 decades, devastated much of the Middle East. Ancient historical sources indicate that the Sassanian army used war elephants and heavily armed infantry formations. Yet the Muslim forces possessed advantages in mobility and fighting spirit. And after several days of battle, the Sassanian army was defeated. During the first centuries that followed, many Iranians gradually converted to Islam. This transformation occurred slowly, unfolding across hundreds of years rather than happening immediately. Another fascinating development was that Persians quickly became one of the most influential intellectual communities in the Islamic world. And Iranian cities such as Nishapur, Ray, and Isfahan grew into major centers of learning. Iranian scholars played a crucial role in translating and preserving ancient knowledge from Greece, India, and Persia. In the centuries that followed, the land of Iran would witness a remarkable intellectual flowering rarely seen in human history. Persian physicians, mathematicians, and astronomers would help shape the scientific development of the wider world. Vast libraries filled with handwritten manuscripts, astronomers standing atop observatory rooftops, tracking the motion of stars across the desert sky. Physicians studying the human body through careful observation and detailed records. And in the vibrant cities of medieval Iran, scholars debated mathematics, philosophy, medicine, and cosmology. After centuries of war and conquest, the Persian world entered a very different era. From roughly the 9th to the 13th centuries, many cities across Iran and Central Asia grew into intellectual centers of the Islamic world. Trade routes connecting China, India, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean, often collectively known as the Silk Road, allowed scientific ideas to travel farther and faster than ever before. One of the greatest figures of this era was Avicenna, a renowned physician who served in several royal courts. His most famous work was the Canon of Medicine, a 5-volume medical encyclopedia that synthesized knowledge from Greek, Persian, and Indian medicine. One of the most influential scholars was al-Khwarizmi, who lived in the 9th century and worked in Baghdad, then the intellectual center of the Islamic world. Al-Khwarizmi laid the foundations for an entirely new branch of mathematics. Algebra. In astronomy, Persian scientists also achieved remarkable discoveries. The golden age of Persian culture was also the result of a vast ecosystem of knowledge. Large libraries were built, and ancient manuscripts from Greece, Persia, and India were translated into Arabic and Persian. These texts later traveled to Europe through translation centers in Spain and Sicily. The centuries that followed would bring profound transformations. The rise of new empires, the intervention of foreign powers, and eventually revolutions that would reshape the political structure of the nation entirely. The wide boulevards of Tehran glow under electric lights, while the first railway trains cross the vast Iranian plateau. Steel factories, universities, and modern airports rise across a land that was once the heart of ancient empires. Yet, alongside these images of modernization unfolds another story. Crowded public squares filled with protesters, religious speeches echoing through loudspeakers, and a revolution that would completely transform the course of the nation's history. National railway lines were constructed, most notably the Trans-Iranian Railway stretching about 1,394 kilometers and linking the Caspian Sea in the north with the Persian Gulf in the south. The modern education system expanded rapidly, and new universities were established, including the University of Tehran in 1934. The country's first modern institution of higher education. In the 1960s, the government launched a series of reforms known as the White Revolution. The program included land reform, the expansion of education, voting rights for women, and rapid industrialization. By the mid-1970s, Iran had become one of the fastest-growing economies in the Middle East. Yet rapid development also created deep social divisions. While major cities modernized with high-rise buildings and new highways, many rural regions remained poor. Gradually, dissatisfaction grew among various groups. Students, intellectuals, religious leaders, and workers. By 1978, large-scale protests began spreading across the country. The event that followed would fundamentally reshape the nation's history, the Iranian Revolution. In April 1979, Iran was officially declared an Islamic republic. At the same time, the country emerged as one of the most influential geopolitical powers in the Middle East. Across more than 5,000 years of upheaval, the history of Iran stands as one of the clearest examples of how a civilization can endure, adapt, and rebuild itself. The transformation from ancient imperial powers into a modern nation with complex geopolitical influence in the industrial age reveals a cultural continuity that has never truly been broken. In the end, the story of Iran does not belong to a single nation alone. It is a testament to the resilience and regenerative power of human civilization itself. A civilization that has moved through thousands of years of history, standing firm amid the ruins of fallen dynasties, and continuing to shape its place while writing new chapters in the unfolding story of the modern world. Thank you for staying with WUFO Space until the very end of this journey through the vast universe. If you found this video interesting and insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to WUFO Space so you won't miss our next cosmic adventures. Your support means the world to us and fuels our passion to keep exploring the wonders beyond.